Good morning. Do we believe it? We made a great confession when we sang that song. And as we come together on this day, our focus is always to be on Jesus Christ. No matter what we're talking about, for us, Jesus is everything. He's all to us. As we think about that, we're going to turn our attention as we continue this series that we've been in for a few weeks on wisdom to the book of Proverbs. And as I was growing up, even probably into my 20s, I would think that Proverbs would be the least likely place I would find Jesus in the Bible. Many people think that Proverbs is essentially practical advice for good, successful living on this planet. And while there is good advice in the book of Proverbs, and much of it is very practical and helpful in your everyday life, there is something deeper and more to the wisdom of God that we see in the book of Proverbs. Now, twice in Proverbs, in chapter 14 and also in chapter 16, oh no, not that far. Ooh, this has a hair trigger. All right, I'm giving up, Jill. You're on it. I will tell you when I want to go. So 2 times in Proverbs, in chapter 14 and chapter 16, there is this warning. There is a way that appears to be right, but its end leads to death. I kind of like the way some of the older translations say it. There is a way which seemeth right to a man. And the reason I like that is because it individualizes it the way the text should be. That this seems to be right is in my mind. It appears to me to be right. I think it's right. Or as we would say today, well, I just feel that this is the right way to go. There is a way that seems right, but the end is death. It's important that we hear that word of warning as we study in the book of Proverbs. Now, when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I had a little record player. It was a Shirt Tails record player. I don't know if anybody is of my generation in here who remembers the cartoon Shirt Tails, but it was actually a Hallmark thing. And so on Saturday morning, I watched Shirt Tails. Well, I have this little record player that had the Shirt Tails on the top of it, and we had a collection of Disney, all the Disney movies that we never saw because we didn't really go to the movies or watch a lot of movies. And if we did later on rent movies, we did not rent Disney movies. But I had these little storybooks for every Disney movie that had come out to that point. So that's about 1982, something like that. And so my younger brother and I would sit in our bedroom and we would listen to, you put the record on and it would read the book to you. Very nice. Like some of you do with your Bible now, you have the app read it to you. Isn't that pretty cool? But I also found in my mom and dad's room, not sure I was supposed to be there, but I ventured in to see what was in. And I found some other records. And Jill, if you'll help me out, I found these 2 records. These 2 records are by the Oak Ridge Boys. Now, back in 1982, the Oak Ridge Boys were still riding pretty high because they had their biggest hit ever, not only a country hit, but a crossover pop hit that had everybody going around singing Papa Mau Mau. Now, that song wasn't on these records. These records were old records, as I thought. Came out in 1973 and 1977, I believe, which is the year of Joe, 1977, the year I was born. But I found these records and I started playing them. And one of the things that happened as I listened to these records is I fell in love with bass singing. This was really, Richard Sturban, who's the bass singer for the Oak Ridge, was the first bass singer I ever really heard in my life that I remember. And I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. And I would sit in my room, I'd play these records over and over and over. Somewhere in that time, my parents had subscribed to Columbia House. Anybody remember the tape clubs at Columbia House? You could get like 20 tapes for 1 penny, and they would send you this nice brown vinyl case that you could keep them all in. And here's my parents' taste in music. They had Kenny Rogers, the Gatlin Brothers, Willie Nelson, and the Oak Ridge Boys and the Statler Brothers are the ones that I remember being in this case. And one of them, next slide, was this Oak Ridge Boys album that came out in 1980. It had the biggest hit on that album was a song called Trying to Love Two Women. Probably not a song we talk about in church, but interesting lyrics. Trying to love two women is like a ball and chain. Sometimes the pleasure ain't worth the pain. It's a long old grind and it tires your mind. Trying to love two women is tearing me apart. One's got my money, the other's got my heart. Kind of an interesting song, but the guy who sang lead on that song in the Oak Ridge Boys was William Lee Golden, or Bill Golden, who at the time was living those words out in his life. This is not a sermon on adultery. Sort of. But I think there is a temptation for us as believers to love two women. You say, well, that sounds kind of weird, Joe. It does until you get to the book of Proverbs. Now, Proverbs is a book, and the setting of the book is such that a father is encouraging his son to pursue the right way of life. And one of the devices the father uses as he's presenting these options to his son, because there are basically two options on how you're going to pursue your life. He presented them as women. Well, this young man is looking forward to finding a woman to be in his life. And so the father presents two women in the book of Proverbs. One is Lady Wisdom, and the other is Lady Folly. Now, he's obviously going to encourage his son to pursue Lady Wisdom. But Lady Folly is enticing. Now, you're going to have to wait to the end of the month when we get a message that will present both of these women and how they're trying to appeal to this young man. So you're going to have to wait a month on that. I'm only going to get to tell you a little bit about Lady Wisdom. In Proverbs chapter 8, this is the only mention of Lady Wisdom in the book, but this is the longest chapter in the book that focuses solely on Lady Wisdom. And essentially what it is her calling out to people. So we're going to read through Proverbs 8. I think we need to hear what Lady Wisdom has to say. Does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights beside the way, at the crossroads, she takes her stand. Beside the gates in front of the town, at the entrance of the portals, she cries aloud. To you, O men, I call, and my cry is to the children of man. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. Hear, for I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right, for my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They are all straight to him who understands, all right to those who find knowledge. Take my instruction instead of silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold, for wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare with her. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and I find knowledge and discretion. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil, pride and arrogance, and the way of evil and perverted speech I hate. I have counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have strength. By me kings reign and rulers decree what is just. By me princes rule and nobles, all who govern justly. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the paths of justice, granting an inheritance to those who love me and filling their treasuries. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. Ages ago, I was set up at the first before the beginning of the earth. Where there were no tops, when there were no tops or no depths, I was brought forth when there were no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills I was brought forth, before he had made the earth with its fields, or the first of the dust of the world. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above, when he established the fountains of the deep, when he assigned to the sea its limit, so that the waters might not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth, then I was beside him like a master workman. I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world, and delighting in the children of man. And now, O sons, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise, and do not neglect it. Blessed is the one who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my doors. For whoever finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. But he who fails to find me injures himself. All who hate me love death. There is a way that seems right to a man, but the end is death. Lady Wisdom is issuing an invitation. And as we look at this invitation, there are 4 ways I think we can process it, that we can remember what is in the invitation. The first, and we're not necessarily going in order as they come in the text, but the first is this call to listen. Lady Wisdom says, listen. And it's not just listening to the words that are coming out of her mouth, but listening to be able to understand what she is saying, because what she really wants you to do is to learn. Notice how she keeps coming back to these ideas. First, the idea of listening. She says in verse 6 there, hear or listen, for I will speak noble things. And then when you drop down the end of the passage in 32 and 33, listen to me, hear instruction and be wise. But if you back up there in chapter 8 to verse 5, notice what she's calling them to do. Learn prudence or gain prudence. But this is a gaining that is not a gifted gaining. It is a gaining that comes through learning. And it's a gaining that comes through living and learning. And some of the best ways to live and learn is actually to fail. It's living and learning. So learn prudence. Learn sense. The most striking call that she issues, it really doesn't come in the form of a call, but she makes this great statement in verse 17 when she says, I love those who love me. I love those who love me. Love's an interesting word. Has a lot of different connotations, not only in English, which it has a bazillion these days. It seems like it's growing. In Hebrew, it did too. In the context of Proverbs, the setting that really helps you to understand Proverbs is actually the book of Deuteronomy. It's the law of God. Now, if you remember, and we actually had our prayer focus point out this passage, in Deuteronomy chapter 6, we are called to love the Lord our God. Well, the first call in that passage is, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one, and love the Lord your God with all your heart. And then in Deuteronomy, we discover all the ways that God loved the people of Israel, his covenant people. And it was displayed through his actions. And so wisdom here is declaring that she will take care of you and provide for you, that she'll love you if you love her. Now, what does that look like from our perspective? How do we love wisdom? We love wisdom by having a great affection for wisdom, by desiring with all of our being to know wisdom, to grow in wisdom. We love wisdom by prioritizing the words that wisdom speaks to us, by prioritizing the effort to learn the lessons that wisdom is trying to teach us. That's how we love wisdom. And the promise is that if we will listen to Lady Wisdom, if we will learn the lessons that Lady Wisdom is trying to teach us, then we will live. Because with Lady Wisdom, as she ends her calling there at the end of chapter 8, she says, for whoever finds me finds life. There's some things we learn about wisdom in this passage that are important too. How do we know, and the title of our series is Wisdom That Works. How do we know wisdom works? She gives two examples of where she was. She was in the presence of rulers and kings, and all of those rulers and kings who issue just decrees and rule with justice do so because their companion was Lady Wisdom. But there's an even bigger example. Lady Wisdom says that when God created the earth, I was right there with him. I was a master craftsman working with God as he created the world. And as you look at the world around us, there's a lot of wisdom built into the way this world was designed. I would really like to talk a lot more about that, but you don't want to be here that long. Study the design of the world. It's mesmerizing. It blows your mind. The other thing I would say is everything is so precisely done that if the precision is off by a fraction or probably a billionth of a fraction in some cases, then this thing falls apart. But wisdom was right there with God. Whoever finds me finds life. But the very last word she says, we need to hear that all who hate me love death. All who hate me love to live their life in such a way that they're going to produce problems and pain and end up destroying themselves. Now, who really loves that? Whoever doesn't love wisdom. Other things I would say about wisdom that we need to pick up on in this passage is that teaches us that this is just not secular practical advice, is that wisdom is about justice and righteousness and goodness and is against wickedness and evil. There are no crooked ways in wisdom. They're straight ways. They're on the up and up all the time. These things that she's speaking of are spiritual qualities that reside in God himself. Wisdom is of God. It cannot be any other way. She mentions this when she says that this fear of the Lord is what makes wisdom really what it is. The fear of the Lord. All who love me will find life. All who hate me love death. There is a way that seems to me, in my thinking, to be the right way to live. And in our society today, we're all about that. We're all about, I get to make my own way. I want to be my authentic self. Well, you didn't authentically create yourself. So you can't be authentically yourself just inside yourself only. You were created by a holy God. And it's his wisdom imparted to you that teaches you how to live. It's not all about what you want and how you think life should go. Because the fact of the matter is, when we look at our society today and this way of thinking that's so prevalent, look at the destroyed lives all around us. Look at the families falling apart. And it all comes down to, there is a way that I think looks right, and I'm going to pursue that way no matter the consequences. There is a way that seems right, but the end is death. It reminds me of another warning. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Those are the words of Jesus. Jesus, who is he? We learn in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 24, and verse 30, that Jesus is the wisdom of God. In Colossians chapter 2 and verse 3, we learn that all the treasures of knowledge and wisdom are found in Jesus Christ. Actually, in the book of Revelation, in the 3rd chapter, there is a line about being the master craftsman that Lady Wisdom says about herself. It's taken from Proverbs 8 and it's applied to Jesus. If you read about Proverbs 8 in the early Christian literature outside of the New Testament, almost universally, the thinking was Proverbs 8 is preparing us for Jesus. Proverbs 8 is pointing us to Jesus. If wisdom is true, that her ways lead to life, then the reality is her ways are the ways of Jesus. I mean, Jesus was very bold when he said, I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus is the one whom we must follow. And Jesus has issued some invitations himself. 2 that I want to think about. One, probably the most famous invitation. Jesus says, come to me, all ye who are weary and burdened. Boy, do people in our society need to hear that invitation. Do I need to hear it some days? You better believe it. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon me and what? Learn from me. Jesus is inviting to take care of us, to bring us into a relationship where he can teach us how to live, where we're yoked together with him. We're moving through life side by side with him, learning how to live life by learning it from him. Learning from his example, learning from his instructions. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. There's another invitation. It's a vital invitation for those who want to be disciples. Whoever would come after me must deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life or preserve his own life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? Jesus is saying in both of these invitations, if you want to live life the way it was meant to be lived, you have to come with me. You have to follow me. You have to do life the way I'm teaching you to do life. And it's not necessarily immediately, obviously practical. Think about the call of Jesus. Deny yourself. Why? Because there is a way that seems right to me, in my thinking, in my feeble wisdom, that leads to death. Deny yourself, take up your cross, wait now. Cross. You know, it's kind of come into our language that everybody has a cross to bear, and it's usually about some temptation, but when we hear Jesus say, take up your cross, in the culture in which he said it, to the people who were with him when he said it, it was an instrument of death. Oh, it was an instrument of cruelty and punishment, but ultimately an instrument of death. Take up your cross. Deny yourself. Take up your cross. Die to yourself. You're essentially saying, I don't know how it all works. I don't have all the right ideas. I'm not here to please myself because I don't even know what that's going to look like or how it's going to work. Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Okay, Jesus, you take me where you want to go. You lead me. Bill Smith was a man who, he's still alive, he's still kicking. He wasn't a was, he's an is. He's still kicking. Bill Smith was just a Christian who, went to his work, did his job, came home, took care of his 3 sons and his wife. And one day, and I'm sure it happened over a period of time, but one day he made the decision to cash in all of his savings. Let's just stop right there. Does that sound like a good decision from the beginning? Everything I've saved up over these years, I'm going to cash it in. To do what? He cashed it in to go to Botswana to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Does that immediately appear to be wise, to cash in all of your savings? And I would submit to you that it is wise. Because following Jesus is the absolute wisest thing you can do. And if you believe Jesus wants you to take the gospel to Botswana, you cash in your savings and you go to Botswana and preach the gospel. Now, what's important about that is Bill Smith had 3 sons, Chris, John, and his oldest son was Jeff. Several years ago, I decided, for those of you who may not know, I preached for 22 years at the same congregation. And about 2017, maybe, 2016, 2017, I was kind of feeling a little rundown. And I decided I was going to go do something for myself. And so I had seen this advertisement in the Christian Chronicle a bunch of times for this workshop down in Lubbock at Sunset. And it was called the Vision Workshop. And the theme for that year's workshop was I'm not ashamed. Or unashamed, I think is what it was. And I'm like, that sounds pretty good. I want to go. So I went by myself. No, I didn't. No, it took my brother with me. We drove all the way to Lubbock. And then on the way back, we did a good thing. We stopped in Kansas and watched West Virginia get beat by Kansas State. But we had to. So I'm at this vision workshop. It's a lot about missions and those kinds of things. And they have a lot of displays. I'm walking by these displays, and I keep seeing this one called Disciple Trips. But every time I walk by the Disciple Trips booth, not one person was there. And I kept doing it. And right before we left to get out of that place, I said, I got to go back there one more time just to see if anybody's there. And I went back one more time, and nobody was there. So I grabbed the literature off the table, eventually made it back home. I called the number on there and talked to Jeff Smith. And we started taking, our congregation was about 85 members. We took upwards of 18 people from our congregation on 6 or 7 different disciple trips, mission trips to other places. And it was because Bill Smith decided to cash in his savings and take his 3 sons, who Jeff was in high school, to Botswana to preach the gospel, which encouraged all 3 of his sons to want to preach the gospel and even to be missionaries, so that Jeff, who was a youth minister for a long time, decided we needed something to help small churches, like the church I was at, take kids on mission trips. But it was because one man decided, I'm going to cash it in and follow Jesus. That's wisdom. And that bears a lot of fruit. So when you think of the book of Proverbs, I don't want you to think of just this secular, practical wisdom. There's some good advice. It's good, solid life skills that you can learn from reading the book of Proverbs. But it's more than that. It's ultimately an invitation to do life with Jesus Christ. Jesus, after he had risen from the dead and before he ascended to heaven, told his disciples, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples for Jesus of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Listen to this. Teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. That's the whole purpose of the church. That's why we exist. We are on behalf of Jesus calling people to come into relationship with him, to do life the way he can show us how to do it. He is the firstborn of all creation. And that's not about order as far as he was born first. He is the prototypical human being. The way he lived his life, and what a short time it was on this planet, was the way God designed for us all to live. So you go and you call people into relationship with Jesus, the one who has all authority, and you teach them what I say. They'll learn how to live. Now, he's very clear here that the beginning, when you finally decide to deny yourself and take up your cross and follow Jesus, you do that in baptism. Baptism is full surrender. That's not to say that you hadn't learned anything about Jesus or you hadn't heard the call of Jesus before and been pursuing a little bit of Jesus. But when you get to this point where you're going to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, and this is just an awesome thought, you are immersed completely into Jesus in baptism. Paul says it's participating in the death, the atoning death of Jesus, and the resurrection of Jesus into a new kind of life, a life that Jesus said was all about learning how to live from him. There is a time when you need to make that decision. To say, I'm done pursuing other people. I'm done pursuing other agendas. I'm done pursuing my own selfish agendas. I'm ready to follow Jesus. And when that time comes, you need to be baptized into Christ. But there is this invitation of Jesus that we answer every day. Now, as Jesus, in Luke's gospel, as Jesus is saying that you need to deny yourself and take up your cross, he adds this very important word, daily. Daily. You saw that in Proverbs 8. She says, as you're pursuing her, when you get down to the end of that chapter in verse 34, she says, blessed is the one who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my door. See, today we get to decide, am I going to follow Jesus? Am I going to love Jesus? Am I going to love wisdom? Or am I just going to try to keep following and loving two women? But remember, the pleasure ain't worth the pain. Because any other way besides Jesus' way is a way that leads to death and destruction. Will you follow Jesus? If you have any need for us to help you, maybe pray for you, maybe you're ready to be baptized into Christ Jesus, you come and make that decision as those of us who have and will declare that we have decided to follow Jesus. Let's stand and sing together.